This is an RCT from 2015 by Deirdre Hurley called Supervised Walking in Comparison with Fitness Training for Chronic Back Pain in Physiotherapy. So I'm just going to use this CASP tool to keep me on track. Question 1, did the trial address a clearly focused issue? Yeah, Hurley explained that previous walking studies in low back pain have predominantly been like treadmill or track walking, so not particularly useful, and they want to find out whether walking intervention in the community, as they say, so just out and about, would be just as good as usual care for persistent low back pain. So it's a pretty clearly focused issue. In terms of the population, it's a really broad inclusion-exclusion criteria, which I won't go into too much, but is here. Importantly, it's people with low to moderate sort of existing levels of physical activity. In terms of the intervention, I've got a little bit of information. Where is it? Down here. So they have 3 trial arms. One is the walking class, one is an exercise class, and one is usual care. So with the walking class, or walking program I should say, and the exercise class have a really good, well, fairly good looking sort of biopsychosocial, pretty modern approach to care. So they're given like the back book, psychosocial explanation of low back pain, a little bit of hurt doesn't equal harm stuff here. So both interventions are pretty standard and clearly focused. And usual care is our usual care in Ireland, so they do explain what that is. There's a lot of stretching and core stuff, and general exercise, that kind of thing. In terms of the outcomes, they use the Oswestry Disability Scale. So that's down here at 6 months. So nice long sort of follow-up to the experiment. Was the assignment randomized? It was. So we can go on. It's worth continuing with this trial. Was there blinding? There wasn't, which is pretty ordinary or pretty normal, unfortunately, for physiotherapy trials. Were the groups similar at the start of the trial? Without kind of going into it and showing you all the details, yes, they were. At baseline, they were very similar, so no one got a head start. Aside from the experimental intervention, were the groups treated equally? Yes, they were. Both groups got pretty equal amount of time with the therapist, that kind of thing. Were all of the patients who entered the trial properly accounted for its conclusion? Yes, there's kind of actually really well documented. Here it is, kind of flow chart of what happens to all the patients. So yes, they were all well accounted for, and there was an intention to treat analysis as well, which is really important. So it's a pretty, it ticks a lot of boxes just in terms of the way the trial's set up. So let's have a look at the results. Where are they? Oh, they're here. So they're all written out here. They've given us confidence intervals, which is great. They haven't given us any visual representation, so I put that in myself. The bottom line is here. There's no statistically significant differences between the groups in the kind of the ODI, so the disability, but also the pain as well, and what happened to self-efficacy, I think, as well. So the walking program, the exercise class, and usual physiotherapy all pretty much end up as much of a muchness. The probably interesting thing this graph shows is that minimal clinical important difference on the ODI is here. That's 10. And as you can see, none of the programs get that close to it, especially considering there's quite a long follow-up of 6 months for any effect to take place. Kind of arguably, the walking program, the confidence interval overlaps it, but really none of them get very close to it at all. How precise was the estimate of treatment effect? Well, we have the confidence intervals, as I mentioned, and so we can kind of visualize how precise it was a little bit better than if we were just given p-values, which is great. Let's see, and they were all statistically significant. Can the results be applied in your context? Yeah, I think because of the really broad inclusion-exclusion criteria, they can. And were all clinically important outcomes considered? Yeah, they were, and it's probably good to mention that they also assessed how much the interventions cost, and the walking and exercise were both cheaper than usual physiotherapy. So this is, in summary, kind of a little bit like another study that I've done a video on called the Self-Study, which really questions this thing, usual physio, the kind of multimodal, kind of quasi-personalised package of care that we give people failed to outperform or was equalled by a really simple walking program and exercise class, both of which were kind of designed on graded exercise principles. So basically walking a little bit further each week is probably just as good as usual physiotherapy. Obviously we don't have any control group, so we don't know what would have happened if these people had been completely left alone. My suspicion is it wouldn't have been that much worse than the outcomes of these three groups. So there's not a lot here that's going to tell us, oh, this is what needs to fix back pain, or what's great for fixing back pain. But it's a lot here to challenge current practice, and a lot to make us kind of think that perhaps simple interventions are just as good, as well as cheaper, and probably easier to implement for patient and clinician as usual physiotherapy.